The long-anticipated sequel to Double Fine's original Psychonauts, Psychonauts 2, is here, and with the talk of it having some accessibility options and some assist modes, does this new platformer really actually make it accessible? Well, let's find out. Before I start this video, I want to remind you, please hit the subscribe button so you can see new videos when it comes out. And if you can hit the bell notification icon too, you can be notified when new videos come out. And if you like this video at the end of it, click the like button, would really appreciate it. Hi, I'm Steve Saylor, I'm blind. And if you're wondering how I'm able to play video games if I'm blind, if you take a look at the video here and the video is not there, click the link in the description down below to see exactly what I see when I'm playing video games. So yes, Psychonauts 2 is finally around the corner. Thank you so much to Xbox for sending over a code for me to be able to review it for you today. I wanted to sort of take a look into it because of the promotion and their Double Fine has been a big proponent for accessibility over the past over the past year, especially when they talked about it in Global Accessibility Awareness Day back in May about the accessibility that would be in the game, including some of its assist modes. Now there was a big sort of kind of big story around its invincibility mode, and I actually did talk about some of the accessibility that I was excited to see on Kind of Funny's Xcast. You want to check that out, make sure to click the video there. But I wanted to be able to kind of sort of get my hands onto the game to see what accessibility does Double Fine bring to the table. But I'm not alone. I wanted to be able to sit down with someone who also played it and also can review it for accessibility. So I sat down with editor-in-chief Ben Bayliss at caniplaythat.com to just talk about what is available. And so let's jump right into that conversation. All right, so this is our Psychonauts 2 review. Once again, thank you to Double Fine and Xbox for sending over code for us to be able to try it out and play today. I'm here with Ben Bayliss, the editor-in-chief at caniplaythat.com, and we both got a chance to play it, and I kind of wanted to talk to you, Ben, about this because this is something that is it had an interesting conversation when it came to accessibility and invincibility, and we'll get into that in a minute. But I wanted to know, what are your sort of general thoughts of Psychonauts 2 in regards to story, presentation, all that? Like, what are your sort of general thoughts on it?
I really like it. The story is probably incredibly engaging. For me, the voice acting and such is just fantastic, and I can keep up with the catch-up thing for the last two games that the game is based after. That's all absolutely brilliant for me. And in terms of platforming, it kind of gives me that whole old school platformer style game, but a lot more modernized. But I'm really enjoying it otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts on it, I played a little bit of Psychonauts, the first one. I was able to play it with a little bit with James Willems, who is from Funhouse. He wanted me to be able to play it. He was he's sort of the Psychonauts evangelist, as it were, and so I got to play that video in the description or in the thing up here. But I didn't get a chance to sort of play it full way through before jumping into Psychonauts 2. But I did like the recap that they did. It obviously is a very quick version of what basically the first one and the DLC or the sort of semi-sequel, the Rhombus of Ruin. That one was kind of recapped as well, and it definitely does tie into the events that are happening in Psychonauts 2. But I think the recap is enough that will catch you up to speed, so you can be able to start the story pretty much right away. And you kind of pick up on certain things that happen throughout the game that, yes, if you played the first one and the Rhombus of Ruin, it would definitely give you more context as to what's happening. But I think Psychonauts 2 does a good job that if you've never played it before, it's a good, this is fine to good sort of jump on. And I think playing the previous ones would give you more context as to what's happening. But I think the presentation is great. I think the story to me, it's compelling. It's fun. It's funny. There's a lot of sort of talk about mental illness in this, which is kind of interesting. Yeah. And there is actually a warning at the beginning. That is part, I guess, part of accessibility is having that sort of mental awareness warning at the beginning of the game. So that's good to be able to have that in there. But I thought that actually, I was more intrigued with this one than I thought I was going to be. I mean, I'm not a platformer guy, but this one and this one, when I first sort of when I first like it saw it, and I was like, it didn't really interest me that much because the art style was kind of very Tim Burton-esque, and I was like, I like Tim Burton, but I'm like, I'm not really into that sort of art style specifically. But playing this, I was like, actually, yeah, like it has a style to it, and I really kind of enjoyed it. And I think that like it definitely looks great I'm playing on a Series X. How are you playing it on your playing on Series S or PC?
I'm playing on a PC, but I actually am installing it on the Xbox as well, so I can try on the Series S to see what it's like. But on the PC, it's running wonderfully. There are moments where reflections don't quite happen on mirrors and stuff, but the reflections happen on floor and tabletop surfaces. And, it's always like, oh, look at that RTX. It looks so good.
Yeah, even on the Series X, you can definitely see the some of the like a lot of the reflections. Like the graphics is just like it's just gorgeous. It's a gorgeously stylized game that I think is really cool. And as far as like, it makes me want to be able to keep playing it. Like this year has been kind of weird for me. I haven't been able to play a lot of games, like, or at least the games haven't like really drawn me in as much this past year. But this one, I was like, okay, I kind of want to see where this story goes because I'm invested. I haven't fully finished it. I think I'm about maybe 5 or 6 hours in. How far are you into it, Ben?
I think potentially about probably the same about as you, but a little bit more. It's probably about 9 hours.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Most of our time has been spent running around and exploring for reasons that we'll get into later with accessibility. But yeah.
Well, let's actually let's talk about that for a little bit, because that was something that I noticed that definitely was in the first one, which is very much, I kind of been able to describe Psychonauts as basically it's a collectathon type game. There is a lot of things to be able to find and collect as you go. And for those who are like completionists, there's a lot of sort of replayability for that. I did find though that like I as much as I wanted to be able to collect as much as I could just to try to be able to get like upgrades or at least enough sort of materials to be able to kind of like upgrade or get like new abilities and stuff like that, I didn't really want to be able to do more than just that. I could definitely tell that this was like, I don't want 100% this because it just seems like it's a lot to be able to like collect, but I can definitely like, I see the appeal of it. There's a lot in there and it can definitely be overwhelming if you are someone that's just like, okay, you want to try to collect everything, but there's just so much. And I don't want to specifically get into the accessibility just yet, but I do want to be able to point out one thing before I forget. I don't know, like, so the purple things that you can be able to find in the game, I can't remember what they're called. I believe they're like the brain, like they're like brain sort of things. But they're the currency within the game itself. And the only way I've been able to find them is I can hear a little bit of like a chimes sound effect anytime I'm nearby them. And I can only imagine for you, Ben, that like that's like near impossible for someone who's deaf and hard of hearing. Were you like, did you know that was a thing, or you just found sort of like, okay, randomly purple things throughout the entire world?
I had no idea until you just mentioned that. I've been running around and, I see things, I collect them, the keys that float around, you go and pick it up and the brass goes, this must be for the supply chest I found. You're like, what
supply chest? I had the same problem too.
Yeah. And then I keep running around the levels and you can, like the subtitles will pop up and brass will be saying that, I can hear something nearby, and I'm like, I can't hear anything. What the hell are you on about, Raz? And I've run around the area. I cannot find it. I did not know that there was a sound. I just assumed that there was some silent sound and Raz was just giving you an audio cue that there's something nearby. But wow, did not know that.
Yeah, I was thinking about you when I was playing it, because I was like, oh man, I could just tell, like, because it's subtle. It's not even like a very loud sound effect. It's subtle. Like if you pay attention against the mix of the sound effects, the music, and the like environment ambience that's around there, like if you pay attention, you can be able to hear it, but it is very subtle. And that's kind of where I sort of think that leading into now, I guess, the accessibility of this is that there's stuff that's there that is just subtle and it helps, but it doesn't do a lot of things that we would specifically want from an accessible game. So let's jump into the accessibility of it. Ben, what are your thoughts, just kind of in general, about the accessibility?
I think that Double Fine tried in a good deal of areas, but I think their strength in this game was definitely potentially in the control area in some respects, but everywhere else I felt like it was just too... There was too much lacking there. Like you said, there was audio cues, but there was subtle, and there's other things that we can discuss, like waypoints and the open world platforming. There's just all of that stuff that kind of like added up and made for a really uncomfortable, unpleasant experience for me, really.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I mean, there's certain aspects of this game that essentially it can be like each part of the sort of aspects are difficult. I mean, you have the open world exploration, which we've already touched on is difficult for obviously deaf and hard hearing, for being able to hear the certain items that are around you, and just kind of like navigating the world. Then there's the sort of the platforming aspect of it. Then there's the puzzle solving aspect of it. Then there's the combat aspect. So there's a lot in there to kind of satisfy a lot of different people, but from each aspect, moving like there's some accessibility, but there's not a lot to kind of like really make one sort of aspect kind of stand out. So I do want to be able to touch on kind of the each sort of gameplay elements or gameplay aspects individually. So first, let's talk about the open world area, which essentially is kind of like the mother lobe sort of area. What are your thoughts on sort of the open world, kind of like the exploration sort of thing?
Well, I think this one kind of goes hand in hand with audio and subtitles. I don't know if you've been playing it with subtitles on, but the subtitles are very inconsistent in the clues and the hints that they give. Like sometimes you get hints that are capitalized, but then other times it's characters or locations that are capitalized, and then sometimes the characters are lowercase, and it makes no sense. I had no idea what was actually being conveyed for the subtitles, but there were people that were telling me like to go to different areas in the open world Mother Lobe area, and it's nice to have such an open space to explore, but my problem is finding where I'm meant to go or where I'm meant to be, because the map does not help.
Yes, that was something I wanted to definitely touch on. Is the map that's in this is very difficult to be able to navigate and read. The map kind of looks like essentially a map that you would see in a brochure or like a magazine. It's sort of like it gives you a stylized look at what the mother lobe looks like, and then they have a glossary of like, okay, A equals whichever, B equals whichever, and then you find those letters on the map. And it doesn't really tell you 100% where you are. It's hard, or at least it's hard to tell. It's hard to find, and it's essentially I'm rarely ever using the map pretty much anywhere. I just sort of had to memorize where things were. There is one aspect that I actually did like. I don't know, Ben, if you had a chance to play with this, but whenever you are in the mother lobe, there are definitely certain areas that you can sort of like branches of the mother lobe that you can sort of walk through, and they all have these stylized signs above each of the doors. There is a setting in there that you can actually be able to turn on a more legible font that will actually appear anytime you sort of like move the camera to look in the general direction of that sign. And this not only happens in the mother lobe, but this actually happens in certain areas, as like in actual gameplay further down the line. That actually does help. So if you see the game and there's like a very stylized font anywhere, there is an option to be able to turn on a legible font, which actually made it a lot easier for me to be able to see. It actually had a pretty good contrast and worked great. But I'm glad that it's there, but there's not a lot, like that's the only way I've been able to navigate the world is because of that aspect. So now kind of moving into sort of the platforming aspect. Ben, I don't know about you, but I struggle with this one. How did you fare in sort of the platforming aspect of the game?
Yeah, so originally starting off in the beginning portion of the game, I was like, okay, this is brilliant. This is like, old school platforming. This is bringing back memories of the PlayStation 1, the PlayStation 2. But then as you get to the motherlode and you explore more areas, there's so much platforming, and it's not forgiving. Like you get so high and then you fall down, it will spawn you back to a checkpoint, which is a bonus. But it's it's that problem of having limited lives or limited health to get it right, which is actually where I ended up just leaving invincibility mode on and fall damage, because it was happening so frequently that it was just becoming frustrating and just annoying to play the game.
Yeah, I for those who have watched my channel long enough, I've mentioned it before. Me and platformers don't mix. I have never really been great at platformers. I'm constantly always either hitting jump too late or too early, or I just don't move fast enough or jump fast enough to be able to kind of get to certain levels or certain points, and it takes me several tries to be able to do it. And I am glad that there is a option. They call it an assist mode option, essentially, that can turn on you can turn off fall damage, which honestly, it was the only way I could be able to get through those platforming sections, because I fell a lot. There was several there was those kind of platformer sections probably could take take people a few minutes to do. It took me sometimes 10, 15, 20 minutes at times just to try to be able to get through them. And there was also you're also trying to be able to every time you go into a platforming section, there's always something new that they're adding into it that you have to sort of learn. And I get that. It's they want to be able to make each platforming challenge different than the rest, and you want to make it sort of you're progressing as you go. But there were several times where it's just that kind of hindered me from wanting to be able to move forward, and I was just trying to be able to get through it just for the sake of getting through it. But I can only imagine, Ben, how were you able to were you able to navigate sort of the platforming sections okay, or was there challenges with that as well?
There were definitely challenges. I didn't rely on audio at all to go for the open world areas. I was just heading in the direction I figured I had to go. And as you said, it's hard to judge the distance between things. I think it may be because the camera angle constantly, if you pull out, the camera angle goes up and back. You get closer, the camera gets closer, but there's also the fact that when you are jumping, your shadow where you're going to land is not prominent, so you don't know where you're going to land. And then there's also the trouble where you've got these darn contraptions that shoot you off the thing that you're on, and you just overshoot or you just miss, and that's just constantly just a battle.
Yeah, there is an option for especially that, because there are definitely those little baddies that kind of will pop up in those platforming sections, and there is the ability to be able to do auto aim. So if you do have a side blast, you can be able to just fire, and it will automatically attack a target. But again, if it's if you don't really use that in games, you may not know that that's something that's there, and that may even be added on as a additional difficulty aspect. And yeah, it would the struggle I had with it, I was able to get through it. It's not like it's completely impossible. When I sort of think of games like Celeste or Dead Cells or something like that, essentially where it's just a constant thing of having to be able to try to platform, and it's just difficult. But with this, it's I can see that I can get through it. It's just going to take several tries for me to be able to do it. Been extremely frustrated as well. So, all right, so let's talk about the combat aspect of the gameplay. This is, I think,
Yeah.
where we both struggled quite a bit. Tell us a little bit about what your thoughts are on the combat.
So I think that the combat is, with the platforming, there's that difficulty level. There's a mixture of it can be enjoyable, but at the same time, it can be incredibly hard, especially given how I found that for lock-on targeting system, there are different types. There's the hybrid, there's on, there's off. I found hybrid actually kind of worked to an extent. But there's also the issue of enemies that come in. Some of them do have indicators that they are about to strike, and then other ones don't have an indicator and they just attack. And with Psychonauts 2, the combat is very almost precise. It's not about mashing that attack button. It's about utilizing your different, your mental ability, your psychic abilities, I think they're called.
Yeah.
Your dodging and your attacks, and you're jumping around and you're targeting stuff. It's about utilizing everything that you have. And I found sometimes in combat's gentle areas it was okay, but then when you get like multiple like enemies, you've got ground enemies, you've got heavy enemies, you've got flying enemies. It was just reaching the point where I was just glad there was an invincibility mode, to be honest.
Yeah, for me, and the problem I have with combat in this is that every single combat encounter that I was in, I never knew half the time what I was supposed to be doing. And it's not that there was a lack of tutorial or a lack of information to let me know how to build, like what the strategy is for each individual enemy type. It's just when I felt like I was hitting one button and I could see that it was hitting one enemy, but in reality I was trying to build to hit another type of enemy. But I was also killing the other enemy by accident, and I didn't really intend to. And it felt like it was just kind of very confusing. And when there's a lot of enemies all at once, whether they're big enemies or just kind of ground enemies or, like you said, flying enemies, I couldn't make heads or tails of any of them because the environments are just so. There's just a lot. Like, there's a lot happening, and I'm trying to figure out what I'm supposed to be doing to be able to take out these enemies. But anytime I would push a button, it would sort of do something that I didn't want it to do or didn't expect it to do. And it just it felt more of like I was just, okay, I never felt like I was able to build a strategy of how to be able to take out these enemies. It just felt like I'm just going to mash buttons and hope things work. It's the only area that I'm not really enjoying as much. And I'm just like, nah, I just want to get past these guys. And then that's it. I mean, thankfully, they are far and few between to a certain degree. There's a lot more puzzle and platforming aspects in the game than combat, but it's when you get into combat, it can really slog down the game.
Yeah, I think Psychonauts 2 is one of those games that would have benefited from Ratchet and Clank with the parts game speed feature.
Yes.
100%.
Oh my gosh, yes. If there was a way to slow down combat speed, I would have appreciated that. It would give me enough time to do to sort of at least figure out what I'm supposed to be doing. I agree. I agree with that aspect.
I think that calls back to something that you said earlier, in that you were in combat and hitting buttons and accidentally doing things. I found a lot of my success in Psychonauts 2 was accidental.
Yes.
Like, there's a level where you get to this surreal lighthouse, and at the top of this lighthouse, there's these creatures that hold you down, that won't let you jump. And I didn't know where I was meant to go because there's like about 5 different platforms surrounding this lighthouse, and I fell off the side of the lighthouse to get to the furthest one. I realized that the triple jump glide balloon thing that you use to hover, it kept running out every time I was getting close to it, and I was just falling and dying. It wasn't until I accidentally slipped off, landed on a comb, jumped, double jumped, triple jumped, then glided over. I only just made it over there, somehow managed to carry on through, accidentally hit something and knocked over a big glass thing that got rid of all the creatures in that area. I was just constantly accidentally doing things, and I'm not sure if that was what was meant to happen, but it happened.
I think you're right. I think that's kind of where I think where the accessibility sort of happens. There's intent there. Like it's like there are settings in there that are intentionally put there for accessibility purposes, but there is a lot more sort of like accidental discovery of certain things and certain ways to be able to play and accessibility that's kind of in there that is just like you don't feel like that you are learning as you're playing or learning the mechanics of the game. It just sort of happens, and because as you keep going and like you progressing through the game, because you don't learn how, like, oh, that was what I was supposed to be doing. Like it like when you get to that point later, like when you get to another similar point down the road, and it's like, oh yeah, you were supposed to have known that. You're supposed to have known this is how to be able to get past it.
Yeah.
And it just like and you struggle with it because it's like, I have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing here. And when you finally get past it, it's like, oh, it's just like that previous section. That's what I was supposed to have been doing all along. And if I had learned that, I would have been able to get through this faster. And that's where I think it's like this game kind of like is hard. It's just that it's accidental discovery of things that it's like, oh, okay, and then it's just, and then, all right, then now it just the game's gonna move on now. So yeah, so let's talk about sort of I guess like kind of briefly, because this was something a topic of conversation that came up in regards to sort of the assist modes that it does offer, and we've been talking about assist modes and accessibility for a long time, and I think that what I think Psychonauts tried to be able to do in this one was try to be able to add a little bit of that assist mode in here, whether it's fall damage turning on or off, invincibility mode turning on or off, or the ability to be able to have sort of a narrative story combat. You can turn that on or off. What do you think about sort of the assist modes that they tried to be able to add into the game?
I think that they are incredibly welcome features, especially in a single-player setting. And I think that they helped me get past areas in which I felt like I was struggling too much. And the things that we mentioned now, I was probably stuck on certain levels for an uncomfortable amount of time. Finding out things to progress accidentally, the combat, everything it was stuff that I probably wouldn't have been able to have done if I didn't have the invincibility mode. I did turn the invincibility mode off every now and then, just willingly. But when I was really struggling, it was just brilliant to have it there. And I think that it's something that's being incorporated more into games, just so that people have that choice. I mean, like Double Fine said, you can still beat the game with it on.
Yes.
And I think that's important to highlight. I just wish that there were other assist features present, like maybe, like the guidelines, targeting outlines for enemies, and just usual accessibility stuff that we talk about all the time. I think it would have been perfect to have in conjunction with those assist features.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like those assist modes are great and are definitely amazing that they are there. I think obviously, yeah, the fall damage helped me a ton. The invincibility helped you a ton. And so and I could certainly imagine that sort of the narrative combat and the story mode, like essentially can kind of is something that people would enjoy. But I think. And I applaud that Double Fine was at least trying to be able to add a bunch of other accessibility options that are there. That if you don't need those assist modes, like they didn't. What I liked is that they didn't rely on just the assist modes as the only form of accessibility. They did try other things to add in there to complement those. So stuff like subtitle options, large text, navigational UI signposts, and also the sort of the changing of the more legible fonts. There's the ability to be able to remap controls, and sort of turn down motion blur or camera shake, like all the basics that we've seen in other games. It's just like I think it just kind of hits the the minimum sort of threshold for accessibility, but it doesn't really do a ton of sort of pushing accessibility forward. And it could be just due to the fact that this game has been in development for years, and it's on, like, actually they moved into a whole new engine than the first sort of Psychonauts. They had a custom one, and they moved into Unreal Engine for this one. So there's a lot of learnings that I think that Double Fine, I think, was able to find and learn through accessibility in this. But and so I'm curious to see what their next project would be now that they've had these learnings. But in this particular game, it just sort of it's just enough to make it work for I guess a good chunk of accessibility, but doesn't really hit everything that you would want it to. And there's definitely a lot that's missing that would have made this game even better and more enjoyable to be able to play. Ben, what about you? What are your sort of general thoughts of that aspect?
Yeah, I was going to say that I think that what Double Fine has tried to do is make their game accessible, but obviously we don't know what the internal workings are going to be at that studio. But I think it is clear that the studio had accessibility in mind because, back earlier this year for Global Accessibility Awareness Day, they released a video showcasing the assist modes and all of the settings on the screen. So they're obviously confident and proud of themselves for what they've done, and they should be, because what they have is good. But I think as with everything that we understand, it's not just having things in the menu, it's how those things come into play and how they help the player.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it kind of falls short. So I don't know whether there was maybe some more playtesting needed or just
I don't know. I just had a thought, and I think essentially this game is sort of it proves the example of trying to be able to make make accessibility as part of the design process. There are a lot in here that you can sort of tell that it was there was options that were added to compensate for the fact that there wasn't accessibility wasn't part of the design. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, I get it. Like, we want to be able to push away from adding accessibility later on down the road, and they may have tried to be able to work on some things earlier in the production. But I think the problem is, I think probably when they started Psychonauts 2, accessibility wasn't really a sort of a thing that the developers and studios were worried about or wanting to be able to add in. So they were trying to be able to accommodate for accessibility, but they were doing it with several things sort of locked into place, and they just sort of added options to try to be able to put a band-aid essentially on some of the holes that were missing for accessibility. And so I don't think that that's something that should be they should be admonished and people should be upset about. It's disappointing that people won't be able to play this as they would have hoped. But I think it's it's definitely I applaud Double Fine for at least trying to be able to, you could tell that they knew that there was stuff they needed to fix, and they added it in the options in to try to be able to compensate, but it just doesn't hit that mark that it's supposed to. And I don't know. I applaud, again, I just applaud what they were trying to do. Doesn't hit on everything, but yeah. Yeah. So, so what would you? So, in conclusion, Ben, what would you say? Would you recommend this game for accessibility, or would you say are you maybe say hey, it's on Game Pass, try it out for yourself, that kind of thing? What are your thoughts?
I think I would recommend Psychonauts for the story, and for those that enjoy old school platformers. For accessibility, I think it would be more dependent on what the player is specifically looking for, because what we've mentioned with the platforming, something else I forgot to mention is the color palettes. Sometimes everything blends in the darkness and the shadows, and it just becomes hard to see. So I think people are going to struggle if they're blind or visually impaired. I think people like myself are going to struggle when there's sound cues and there's no sound cues. I think people who have mobility, they're going to struggle, and they're probably going to get fatigued from playing. And I think it's the same, but I don't think I would recommend it too much for people. It would just depend on, like you said, it's on Game Pass. People could jump on and try it out. But I would probably say maybe hold off and just see whether Double Fine can release a patch that introduces some new things or fixes some things. I think that's just generally my take on that.
Yeah, if you have sort of basic accessibility needs and when playing a game, I think this game can definitely be something I would recommend. There's enough there that I think that that can help. But if there are specific things that you need when it comes to accessibility and you find that it's not there in options or in the gameplay, I wouldn't recommend it. I think the benefit of at least being able to try it without really a lot of sort of like financial loss is the fact that it's on Game Pass. If you can try it and like download it and try it for yourself, and if it doesn't work, you can just delete it and move on. It's disappointing, sure, that you won't be able to play it, but at least you can be able to try it and see for yourself. So I would say for myself, I'm enjoying what I'm playing, but I struggle with what I'm playing. And I think that this would definitely be a struggle for a lot of disabled players. And if you are frustrated by that, I get it and I understand that, and I wouldn't recommend it. But if you want to at least be able to try it and see for yourself, then I would at least say, yeah, get it on Game Pass, try it, and then if you don't like it, delete it and move on. And then hope that Psychonauts or Double Fine were able to update it in patches later on, and there'll be certain things that they're able to add in that might be able to help you out. Hopefully that's the case. We'll see. But yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. That's pretty much it for this review. Thank you so much, Ben, for joining me. Where can we be able to where can we be able to find your actual like full review of Psychonauts 2? And where can we be able to just find you in general?
You will be able to find a review and potentially a menu deep dive featuring everything that's in the options over at caniplaythat.com.
Once again, thank you so much to Ben for joining me in this conversation, this long review, but I really do appreciate his insight into it. So if you want to be able to see his full review, make sure you check out caniplaythat.com. The link will be in the description down below. That's it for me. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. If you want to be able to see new videos when they come out, hit the subscribe button. If you want to be notified when new videos come out, make sure you hit that bell notification icon too. And hey, if you like this video, if you like this review, please give it a thumbs up. It would really help me out with building this channel and algorithms and YouTube feeds and all that sort of fun stuff. I really do appreciate it. So that's it. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next video. And as always, I remain obediently yours. Bye.